we found them to be very good. We used.
And I'll want to introduce Ann Wright, who works for Mothers Out Front, both locally and in Arlington and at the statewide level. She is also on the steering committee of the Clean Heat for Belmont, the group that drove fossil fuel prohibition warrant article this last year, and is on the facilitators team for the Rocky Mountain Institute Building Electrification Accelerator, and holds a master's degree in community economic development. She spent most of her professional career doing anti-poverty, anti-racism, and voting rights work with low-income youth organizations such as Youth Build USA. She lives in Arlington for 30 years and has 4 young adult children. And thank you very much for your time and presenting to us today.
Thank you so much, Phil. Oh, is there somebody that needs to say something? Okay. Thanks so much for that nice introduction. I'm really excited to talk to you here today about building electrification. Senator Barrett laid it out. Senator Barrett and Rep. Gouveia laid it out very clearly, and made it clear that building electrification is so important and is one of our top challenges in terms of reducing emissions. But I'm also especially excited to talk about the grassroots organizing and people power aspect behind this, because he also gave a nod, Senator Barrett also gave a nod to that, thanking us for really being the engine behind so much change. Oh yeah, I need to share my screen. Forgot about that part. There we go. Great, so now I'm not gonna be able to see you, mostly. So speak out if there's something important to say, but as Phil said, put questions in the chat, and we should have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for a discussion. So this is what we'll cover today. It's going to be a really broad overview, and I hope I won't bore you with some of the details. We'll go over quickly the need for building decarbonization. We'll talk about Brookline's fossil fuel prohibition and what it started, the movement it started, other Massachusetts actions since that, the Rocky Mountain Institute collaboration and the fuel that's giving our movement, and our best thinking so far, and this is a moving train, it's a plane being built as we fly it, our best thinking on legal pathways forward and the most effective pathways forward for people like us. So building decarbonization is a challenging problem. I can say that from personal experience, trying to deal with my old New England second and third floor condo and trying to electrify. But there are clearly 4 main things we can and should do. The first is we need to demand that new buildings and major reconstruction are all electric. It's the low-hanging fruit. And our motto is, if you're in a hole, which we are in terms of climate change, the first thing to do is to stop digging. We need to convince people that electrification is possible and affordable. And if you put in a fossil fuel system, you'll be stuck with it, and you'll have to change it within a couple decades anyway, and it'll be more costly in the long run. Second, we need to decarbonize our electricity. A lot of us have done this through our community choice aggregation plans in our municipalities. This has been a great movement. Those of us who haven't done it should do it. And those of us who have done it need to keep boosting it and opting as many people up to 50% and 100% renewable as possible. Third, we need to work on building retrofits. We need to retrofit and electrify existing buildings. This is a more challenging problem. There are a lot of buildings that aren't going to be new right now that we need to retrofit. But there are 2 movements or actions on this front in the last couple months. First, Governor Baker himself called for retrofitting and electrifying 100,000 homes each year for the next decade in his climate plan that he released in December. This is really good news. Senator Barrett pointed it out. There are some inconsistencies that he's not really backing up what his staff wrote in that, but it's written, and that's a really good thing. Second of all, the Mass Renews Alliance, which is the new name for the Green New Deal, Massachusetts, has filed a legislation with Reps Maria Robinson and David LaBeouf to introduce legislation to retrofit and electrify. It's called the Jobs with Justice Retrofit Bill. We can put the numbers in the chat. An act providing for building justice with jobs. So these two things really get this retrofit work started. The fourth lever here, you can see, is embodied carbon. I really know very little about this. I'm going to skip it for now, just in the interest of time. So you might say, but I've heard that air source heat pumps don't work in cold climates. They're too expensive. They're not effective. But in fact, I'm just going to go over this chart of the progress that's been made on these levers in the last 10 years. I'm going to go through this very quickly in the interest of time. 10 years ago, heat pumps really were expensive and not as effective. They've changed a lot in the last decade. Now they're 3 to 4 times more efficient and perform very well in cold climates. People in Antarctica have them. Over 30,000 homes in Maine have them. Recently, the Rocky Mountain Institute released a study saying that in the Boston area, which is a very cold climate, as you know, electric heat pumps operate at within 3% of the cost, operate and are installed within 3% of the cost of natural gas HVAC cost. Second, decarbonized electricity. 10 years ago, we were very reliant on coal in Massachusetts, about 10%, and our electricity was only sourced by about 13% of by renewables. Today, coal is down by half in the US. Coal only sources Massachusetts electricity at the rate of 0.5%. And renewables are, we're up to 16% renewable sourcing our electricity in Massachusetts. So we've really made progress. And our CCAs and CCEs, community choice aggregation plans, boost that as well, and a lot of us have them. Arlington default electricity is up to 11% more than what the state mandates already. Third, building retrofits. 10 years ago, there were very few options of actual physical technology to replace our equipment. Now we have a lot more options. Prices are coming down, and we know, and it's becoming more widespread knowledge among contractors and homeowners, the coupling really good weatherization with this new electrified technology reduces our energy bills and is workable in extreme weather. And I guess there's growing demand and knowledge about embodied carbon, but again, I don't know too much about that. Next slide, rushing through this. Why is building decarb important to meeting our climate goals? I think the senator and rep touched on this, but I like this chart. It shows us very clearly that the green line, electrical power, has gone down 53% in the past 15 years or so. Emissions from electric power have gone down 53% since 2005, but emissions for buildings have barely changed. They've only gone down 11%. And they're tricky. It's a really tricky problem. We can't deny that. But if we don't work on that 40% of emissions coming from buildings statewide, we're not going to meet our legally mandated climate goals. And just to address Senator Barrett's charts of how much comes from buildings, there's a certain percentage of the electrical emissions that is assigned to the buildings, and that's how I got up to about 40% of all emissions statewide coming from buildings. So I'm not just playing fast and loose with those figures. I think it's pretty accurate to say the 40%. So many people have been working on components of building decarbonization for years, But from my vantage point as a community organizer, there was one action that kicked off the grassroots movement toward building electrification in a big way, in an exciting way. And that's Brookline's Warrant Article 21, passed in November 2019 at their town meeting with a 211-3 vote. Really exciting. It called for prohibition of installation of new fossil fuel piping, either gas or oil, in new construction or significant rehab, 75% or more. And it was the first fossil fuel ban outside of California, the first in cold weather climate, and the first bylaw like this to include building renovations as well as new construction. So this was a huge thing. Then of course, it made a lot of the rest of us excited. Wow, something's really happening. Somebody's given us a handle and a method for both making this change and educating our people about this and the possibilities. I know in Arlington, our town manager, Adam Chapdelaine, and our energy manager, Ken Pruitt, who's on this call today, jumped at this even before Sustainable Arlington and Mothers Out Front and said, we're filing this, this month, year ago, January. And they jumped on it. And so the grassroots jumped on it as well. So yeah, a lot of other municipalities started thinking about it, but Brookline and Arlington didn't quite make a movement. But to our benefit, the Rocky Mountain Institute, based out in Colorado, jumped in, contacted a lot of us and said, we want to build an accelerator program. We want this to happen all over Massachusetts. So help us start this accelerator program where we'll have a local partnership. We'll have 8 monthly workshops with local and technical experts, talking about building electrification, practicality, technical aspects, legal pathways, community organizing, outreach to marginalized communities, political pressure, et cetera. And we had this completed. It went from April 2020 through January 21 with all these towns. I won't read them. You can see them on your screen. Some joining a little later, but we topped out at 16 of us. And it was tremendously successful. 2 of us filed home rule petitions, a bunch of other filed non-binding resolutions, and we're planning on holding a second cohort of this to start sometime in the next couple months of all low and middle income and environmental justice communities, because we think that is politically and morally important. So, as probably a lot of you know, just a month after we launched the accelerator, the Attorney General's office ruled that in spite of their political support of Brookline's warrant article, there were at least 3 laws that stood in the way of this being legal. Gas code laws and building code laws that prohibited it. So our cohort, our accelerator, were depressed and licking our wounds for just about 12 hours. And then, as all great activists do, we jumped back in and said, this has to happen. We believe in it, it's got to happen, and it can happen. We the people. So we came back, we decided we'd explore all other pathways toward municipalities being able to prohibit fossil fuel hookups and incentivize them, and in whatever way continue with our accelerator program. So fast forward, after talking with legal counsel, elected representatives, and appointed municipal officials as well, and other activists and ourselves, we came up with these 4 main paths forward. And it's certainly not the only thing. People keep thinking, and there's some that aren't on here. And of course, the new law that we hope is about to come through, as Senator Barrett said, we'll add more tools to our toolbox. Very exciting. And I think it's going to catapult us ahead. But these are the 4 pathways we narrowed it down to. Non-binding resolutions calling for the state to fund and make policy plans for decarbonizing buildings across the state. Home rule petitions. A home rule petition is where a municipality says, look, I know we're officially not allowed to do this according to state law, but let us do it anyway. They're used for all sorts of things. I know in our town meeting, they come up every single town meeting for various things. And so 2 of us have passed our home rule petitions, and 6 more in our accelerator program are poised or getting ready to file their own home rule petitions, saying, let us prohibit fossil fuels anyway, in spite of those laws. Ours is sitting in the legislature right now, ours and Brookline's. So this is exciting. Also, zoning incentives wouldn't require electrification of new buildings, but it would incentivize it in both old and rehab buildings. And then for cities actually aren't prohibited by those 3 laws that the Attorney General cited from passing a prohibition, Brookline-like prohibition. They can do it. I think we all know, and the cities know, that if they did it, they would be slapped with a lawsuit immediately. And so understandably, they are not jumping forward, but I know the cities in our accelerator are considering it. I just want to accentuate that even if a home rule petition isn't passed, and even if the resolutions that are passed are non-binding, these are all, and if zoning incentives are only incentives and they don't force you to electrify, these are all really good educational and political tools to increase the pressure on the state legislature to do what they're going to have to do to meet our emissions goals. And it's happening. I was so excited organizing my home rule petition. We got people talking to us that never would have even been thinking about climate change, electrical buildings, etc. You know, just talking because they had to vote on it at town meeting. They were going to attend town meeting. It was really exciting. And that's what we really have to do. We have to give ourselves an excuse to talk around town about this. I suspect I'm almost out of time. Phil, is that right?
Yeah, it's 11:20. So we have about 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And we certainly can continue after 11:30 if you want to. So if you have any questions, please post them in the chat box. And also, could I ask you to mouse over your image and click on the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner and click select the drop down for rename to add your town to the end of your name. So we know who's here. It'll be mutually beneficial to know who's doing what.
Great.
And go ahead, Ann.
Before I stop sharing my screen, I'll just show you that I do have the some of the text of Brookline's non-binding resolution. I have a description of Arlington's home rule petition, which passed, and I have some examples of zoning incentives. So you will receive those with the slides. I'm pretty sure, and you can ask about them too now. So I'll stop sharing, and yeah, let's talk.
And have you gone through all of your slides?
Those 3 were the last that I didn't.
Okay.
I think it's really important that we talk as a group.
Okay.
So
good. I was just thinking if you put on the last slide that shows your contact information.
Oh yeah. Do you want me to do that now?
Sure.
Okay.
And I am looking in the chat window for questions. Sue Swanson says that she has a air source heat pump system and it's working great. I do not see any other questions in the chat box.
Should we just talk a little, or are there people
Yes,
that have
I
comments?
would have to unmute people, or let's see, can you see if you can unmute yourselves if you want to ask a question, and then after you ask a question, if you can mute yourself again.
Sue Thomas has her hand up.
Hi.
Go ahead, Sue.
I'm really sorry to hear that we missed out on that opportunity in the last year as the town of Westford, but excited that Acton was able to participate, our neighbor. I'm curious, when I heard about Brookline's initiative, my understanding is that Brookline is pretty built out. And that makes it easier because the kind of resolution you were discussing doesn't prohibit a lot of new development because you don't have a lot of new development happening. So I'm wondering, in the participating communities who might not be at full build out and who therefore are not just blocking renovations, but also blocking potential developers from developing in the way they might like, how you see that working out, or if that was a hurdle or a bigger barrier to action.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, Acton might be, they are filing a home rule petition. They probably have more time, more space to build out. Lee, do you want to address that?
Well, yeah, we have building going up all the time, so we'll see. Concord's doing it also. They have a little less building going on, but you know, we don't know yet if we're going to get significant pushback, but we do expect to win.
Yeah, and I think every municipality is going to be different. I think you need to assess, you know, kind of do a power analysis of your town.
It was
Clearly
implicit in my question. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That we do have some very powerful developers sitting in key places in town.
Yep.
I would add, if you have an open town meeting, one of the advantages is the developers often aren't there to vote, and you're talking about people who have homes that people haven't moved into yet. So it's an easier first step because that's why we expect to win. The builders and developers don't have a vote, most of them. So we also had already massively won a emergency declaration for our town. So we know our town meeting attendees are generally on board.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to talk to you about it, Sue.
Okay.
And remember, a huge thing is just, you know, getting the issue out there, vetting the idea, talking to your contractors, you know, they were talking about, are we preaching to the choir? You know, let's be bold. I know in Arlington, we need to do more of that. Pull the contractors in, try to push the envelope there with practicing actually building a few electric houses. We only have a few in Arlington.
Okay, I see another question from Renu Boswick from Bedford.
Hi, Renu.
For warrant articles, did you have to do it as petitioner's article, or did your select board or town government put it forward?
That's a good question. It happened differently between Brookline and Arlington. In Brookline, they had petitioners. In Arlington, our select board actually ended up putting forward recommending our home rule petition. And actually, when we first filed right before COVID, then everything got shut down. So it's a little complicated, but we have a town clean energy future committee made up of volunteers and staffed by town personnel. And the first one before COVID, they filed it. So the answer is you can do it different ways.
Like, would it be better if we took the time to try to get our select board on board, or do you think there's benefit in doing it straight as a petitioner's article in terms of just getting the word out to lots of people? Because it seems this is more about getting the word out to people than it is about actually making a change.
Yeah. I think either way, but you're going to want to get your select board or try to get your select board on board to, even if they don't introduce it, to approve it and to sponsor it and to put the good word out and get it in the local paper that they like this idea. So, and yeah, that's the point. You definitely are going to want to identify different bodies, agencies, stakeholders that you'll want to meet with and try to get them to come out and support of it.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask other people to see if they have a judgment on that. I don't see any. I mean, once it comes up for a vote you're a town meeting, right?
Mhm.
It will definitely help you if you can say endorsed by and or introduced by the select board. But I don't see it would be different in either case. Phil.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, any resident can by citizens petition put a warrant article on the town meeting warrant. So as a last resort, if you're not getting any headway with getting the select board to put it on the warrant or endorse the warrant, there is a citizen petition method to do so. And Belmont residents had done that in the past. But that's kind of a last resort. It's certainly politically better to get the select board to endorse it if they can, or get as many other committees in town to support it.
Somebody had their hand up.
Yes.
He does.
Lee?
This isn't, I'm going to go out on a limb with Anne. This isn't really a question, but I want to note that Mothers Out Front is prioritized doing our statewide campaign on this. And even though the Building Electrification Accelerator will be focusing on environmental justice communities, I assume, Anne, that we will be willing to help any community. All of the materials that we all have used are easily available. So any community that wants to move on this, I think we stand ready to help you and share materials. Right, Anne?
Absolutely. And please don't reinvent the wheel. I mean, we have literally hundreds of documents and a dozen flyers that you could retrofit for your municipality and texts of sample home rule petitions and resolutions. It's
fact sheets from experts like RMI answering every conceivable question you will get with backup data and reports.
Yeah. Expert speaker names we could refer if you want somebody to testify. So don't reinvent the wheel.
Looks like Judy's got her hand up.
Yes,
Yeah.
Judy?
I'm just wondering, with the new climate bill about to be signed for Massachusetts, has anyone been able to figure out where that bill will help us on this effort?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you raised that. I meant to mention, I mean, it won't make this irrelevant, because as far as I understand it, and I'm not an expert, there's going to be a year where the DOER will be shaping the new net zero stretch code. And it could be defined in many ways, very weak or very strong from our opinion. And so there's going to be a whole year where our advocacy is absolutely going to be needed. And so that may become a tool, a tactic that we'll want to do, right? We'll want to jump in on. And then after that, it'll be a matter of, like they were saying, getting our municipalities to opt in to that code as soon as possible. So we've got our work cut out for us. But I don't think that, I don't think the home rule petitions are unusable then. I think, grassroots pressure, it's a tool, an excuse to talk with people at every level of politics and in a town or city about this. So I think continuing to build the pressure, and I forgot to say that in the accelerator program, a requirement was that town officials had to be part of it. There's real power there.
Yeah.
People really promulgating the necessity for building decarbonization.
And there's power in numbers. The more towns that participate in any way just makes the message even stronger to the legislator.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine us, all 8 of us or however many in a couple months who have passed these home rule petitions, our town managers or mayors marching up either virtually or in person to the State House and saying, hello, we're very serious about this. What are you doing? Continuing to move it forward.
And often changes happens at the local level, and then the state follows along.
Yeah.
Just like with the plastic bag ban. You all recall there was just 1 or 2 towns, and then it just spread like wildfire.
Yeah, and there's a lot of work to be done. As I said, we really didn't do enough on educating and reaching out to the construction community, and only a little bit with architects. There's a lot of education. People do what they're used to doing. And since it's not that much, it's not obvious that people will save money over the long term, that construction people are just going to keep putting gas furnaces in. We have to push that envelope. I'm excited. I know Mothers Out Front Arlington has sort of sworn to do that. So if anybody's interested, contact me and we can build that component together.
Oh, was the reaching out to the construction people, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, contractors.
Yeah, I heard from somebody who's not in, he doesn't seem to be in this whole session, but is an activist in this, that there's a particular contractor named Rodenheiser, somewhere out western Boston area, where if somebody has to have their central air conditioner replaced, they just put in a heat pump. And after they put in the heat pump, which only costs a couple $100 more, they tell the person, oh, by the way, we put in the air conditioner, but it's actually heat pump. And when it is 30 or 40 degrees out, use this. Don't use your gas, because when it's 30 or 40 degrees out, the electricity to run a heat pump is cheaper than burning gas. You can't make that as a definitive statement when it's down to 20 degrees or 10 degrees, but at 30 or 40. So this particular contractor is sold and takes it upon himself. So I think we need to maybe get more contractors doing like that.
John, could you put his name in the chat box, please? I'm going to be saving the chat box as well as the recording.
Okay.
Yeah.
Judy, did you have a? You have to unmute yourself. Judy, you have to unmute yourself. There you go.
I'm sorry, I just have to leave, so I'm just saying goodbye. I'm sorry, it's been great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. I also wonder about Mary and Bob White's question in Concord. I'm trying to locate you on the screen.
Yes, it's she asked. We have heat pumps, but when temps are below 32 degrees, we have to switch to our boiler. How can homes have nothing to switch to?
Yeah, I can respond to that personally. I've been trying to switch over. I have heat pumps in about half my house. And it's okay when some of my adult kids aren't home, but when they come home, we have to turn on the gas for those pieces. And design of the house is really important too. If you have big open spaces, the heat pumps do fine. And but if you don't have ducts around your house, you'd have to install a heat pump unit in every single room, and that's really expensive. We're not able to do that right now, so it's not super easy, and that's why we're doing the new construction first, because that is cost comparable and much easier and more comfortable. Our big open room, sort of one of these expanded kitchen, dining room, living room, is heated pretty well by a heat pump. But we also blast our gas in this cold weather from 6 to 9 in the morning, or else it's really unlivable. So it's not, this isn't magic. It isn't easy. And also building a super tight envelope is very important. So that's where the mass save, improving mass save services and federal and state funding for retrofitting old buildings comes in. We've got to do that. Even if I could afford it, it's not the answer for everybody. And we have to have an answer for everybody. So
Yes, John?
The Whites
The
did that.
question, the person who said that I think it was at below freezing, they had to go to gas.
Yeah, the Whites.
I just wondered, is that because it just gets too cold, or is that because that's programmed into your thermostat? Because I unfortunately, I don't have, I've only been here 3 years, and when I was in a previous state, I had heat pump. And with my heat pump, I was able to do the controls, and I found that I could get down to at least 18 degrees Fahrenheit where my heat pump could do it. But I could make the settings so that, oh, when it gets 32, then just switch over to backup. You know, so you might just check that maybe you can set it down further.
Yeah, and I've also learned a lot about using the fans and adjusting the temperature a little. So it's been a learning. We've had them about 1.5 years. Tom, you had a question? Comment?
Oh, sorry, just mention I do have heat pumps in my house. We got them through the Heat Smart program. It's full house heating, and it's handle the winter fine. So now it's a little bit, probably a tad oversized for my house. So I think the sizing calculation is really important. But, you know, I've got the Heat Smart program. We kept our oil furnace as a backup because that's how the incentives work. Don't ask me why they've done that, and I hope they'll change it. But we haven't had to turn our oil furnace on once in 2 years, 2 winters really. So
No.
it's not a technical issue. I think it's much more of a sizing question and looking at your house. I mean, we're a retrofit, so we had to kind of think about that. But if it's properly sized, the technology, you know, it's used in Canada. It can handle cold temperatures. The efficiency is not as good when it gets really cold. So, you know, you want to consider the cost effectiveness, but it can certainly handle it as long as it's sized properly.
Yeah, the deal about the sizing, as my understanding, it used to be that heat pumps were installed for air conditioning, and heating was just sort of like an added benefit. And we don't need too much air conditioning here, so the heat pumps weren't very large. But now, if you size it for heating, you just get a bigger heat pump, and it has way more capacity than you need for air conditioning. But you are able to then just use it for heating down to pretty low temperatures.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope the programs are improved. We did Heat Smart too, Tom, and honestly, I'm not impressed by New England Ductless, who installed ours. They haven't been helpful at all. They keep canceling appointments when I'm trying to get them to put in 2 remote sensors to improve the temperature regulation. They've canceled several times. And I don't think they sized and scoped out our house very well. So I think we're at the beginning of a technology, you know, use of this technology. In my opinion, it sounds like Tom's house just naturally fits it better, and that's great.
Yeah, I mean, I use them too. I agree. There's definitely, I think the whole industry needs to mature a little bit.
Yeah.
It can do the job now, but I think, yeah, one of the goals, this is aspirational, right? We got to build the foundation for having the demand and for having the industry grow and really make this happen. So it's a combination.
The roadmap bill is large, and I don't know the details, but I would hope that in that there would be funding for technical training, in technical school, they're probably, as it is now, they're probably being taught how to work on a gas system for a house. We need to make sure that they're trained on how to put in heat pumps and et cetera.
Yeah, I think the whole HVAC industry, they could steal market share as that company you mentioned, right? It's a big incentive for them to learn about heat pumps and just do the whole package. Why not, right? And we could get involved with our own local technical schools, and we could probably do it without state funding. Just ask them to tweak their curriculum.
Yeah. Well, actually, if we get the heat pump companies, or the HVAC companies to realize we're going to be going to heat pumps, and they start doing it, then they are going to be demanding from the VOTEC schools, we need you to have these people trained for us because we're going to hire them. You know, so it probably helps more from the pull angle than from the push angle.
Yeah. I also heard from people at Mass CEC and our town energy manager, Ken Pruitt, that they are trying to get funded people that would be free consultants or low paid consultants or low cost consultants to help us, to help somebody who wants to install, so that you don't get the mediocre service that I did from New England Ductless, and can really advise you about placement and size and how to think about it. And so that's what, if anybody's thinking about it, definitely get a little help, even if it costs you a couple $100 to get some advice. It's going to pay off in the long run.
Yeah, but the deal is, how do people know about that? You know,
I know.
How do people know where to get that information?
Well, if the Heat Smart program starts up again, they would put those consultants out, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, any other questions in the chat box? I do not see any. I posted that Murfield Mechanical was the designated installer for the Heat Smart Belmont program. Another installer is Revision. They do solar photovoltaic as well as heat pump. Those are the only two that I know of.
There's another one out here. I'll have to find the name. Two of our neighbors in Acton just installed them and absolutely love the work of this company. But I put in the chat that Muirfield actually puts ads in our local paper every single week, big ads, trying to get people to have them install heat pumps. It's now they see a market opening for sure, you know, and they push it with all of the efficiencies that people will get.
There's also advanced mechanical that does it, and we found them to be very good. We used Roden Hauser to install our 5 units, and they were excellent, but extremely expensive. And I think advanced mechanical is more reasonable in their pricing, and they're also very good.
Can you put those in the chat box, please?
Advanced Mechanical?
Yes.
Okay, and what town are they out of, do you know?
Hudson.
Hudson. Hudson, okay.
Right.
Good.
Helpful.
Okay. It is now a little about 10 minutes of noon, and I'm free until noon, and people can drop off if they want or stick around. I saw somebody raise their hand. Was that Bob White?
No.
No. Okay. Any other questions? And did you put your email address in the chat box?
I'm going to do that right now.
Okay, good. John Brown from Winchester.
So there's nobody on this from Brookline. Well, there are people from Arlington. I was going to say, you know, Brookline was the initiated this whole idea, but you know, Arlington also passed the town meeting or whatever it was, Warrant. Was the vote in Arlington close to what there was in Brookline, which was like 99-1?
Yeah, it was 225 to 20 or something.
Okay. I don't know much about, I don't know anything about Arlington. I know that what I heard in Brookline when it first happened was that they had architects and HVAC people and everything sort of from the beginning. They had scheduled a meeting with every town meeting member before, in advance of the town meeting and so forth. Was similar modus in Arlington?
Similar. We reached out to a lot of people in the town with positions in DPW, inspectional services, et cetera. We talked with the Democrats and various architects, but our main tool, I think, was Precinct Organizing. We had done this for our CCA, and we have 21 precincts, and we got 1 or 2 captains for every precinct. And we work those precincts. It's your basic grassroots organizing technique, because when you think about it, they're who have to vote. They could stop it or they could pass it.
So you're saying you had organized the town meeting members of each precinct?
We reached out, we did education. We tried to, and this was in COVID, so we emailed people and called. And then in Arlington, there are precinct meetings, either on their own or clumped with a few other precincts, where you run through all the warrant articles.
Are you saying, is that a meeting of the town
of the town meeting members?
It isn't like open to the entire everyone?
Yeah, and anybody can register for it. So I registered for mine and got somebody on our team to register for every meeting. And you just work it, you explain it. And so then at least you're not going to have people voting out of misunderstanding, and you can counter any objections there. It was really wonderful. I mean, it's so exciting to just have that opportunity to talk about climate and the possibilities of electrification with people who otherwise, not everybody has to think about these things, so you get to talk about them in great detail. It's really fun. I highly recommend it. And you're right next door in Winchester. Give me a call.
Okay, right. And I think I think that Ken Pruitt lives in Winchester. So
he does.
I haven't ever met him yet, but yeah.
He's a great guy. You could call him up. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone. This was.
And thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome. I hope people got something from it.